Marty is an Australian Shepherd, which means he has a lot of nice fluffy coat, and he actually has less now than he will in the winter time because his winter coat's all blown out. And I wanted to talk to you about a couple of the tools that I've found I like to use on his coat, because when I did get him, I made it a point that I wanted to be able to groom our dog. And we have lots of grooming tools, so I figured I would just start trying them and see what works best, and I did some research on my own. So I wanted to show you some of the things I use. So anytime I get Marty ready to groom, the first thing I start with is essentially what looks like a hairbrush. This is one of the safari tools that we sell, but I like to use it because it's a great way to get all of the initial knots out of his coat. Because similar to people, he will get some knots in his coat. So I'll start off by brushing his whole body and getting those knots out. Now this is not a great tool to get out a lot of loose hair, but it is really good for knots. So I'll start out with this, and then I'll switch to a Shed Magic. So this time of year especially, Marty sheds quite a bit. So I try and groom him about once a week on average, and then when he's transitioning from winter to summer, he blows out his coat. So essentially what that means is all of his winter coat is being pushed off of his body, so he's blowing it out. And you'll just see hairballs everywhere. So I'll groom him every other day around that time, just because one, it decreases the amount of hair I have to vacuum in my house, but also it's a lot better for his coat health. It's pulling all the dead hair out so fresh new hairs can grow in, as well as keeps him cooler. So I'll use this Shed Magic, and again, he's not shedding super heavily right now, and you can see the hair that we got off of him. So he loses quite a bit of hair on a routine basis, which is why I still try and do this about once a week, and it keeps his coat healthier, and it's a great opportunity for me to really check and make sure he doesn't have any mats. So a mat is when he gets a really, really tight, long knot in his hair. It's essentially like a dreadlock in his coat. These are really bad for them because they can hold on to bacteria, they can start to get really nasty, but also it will pull on his skin, so then they can form a sore. So by grooming him weekly, I keep his mats down. He still gets some from time to time, especially between his back legs, but I always just cut them out because one, he has a ton of hair to spare, but also it's just a lot more pleasant for both of us because it's really hard to get a mat untangled. So I just snip them out while they're small, and he grows more in without issue. So anyway, I'll use this tool over his whole body just to pull out both the upper coat, which are these long hairs that you can see, but Marty also has what's called an undercoat. So he's a double-coated dog, which means he has super long, coarser hairs on top, and then underneath he has really fluffy, waterproof hairs up against his skin. Anytime you're grooming a double-coated dog, think Aussies, Corgis have double coats, a lot of Collies have double coats. You want to make sure you pull out that undercoat because that will just build up underneath and it's harder for the dogs to get it out. So a tool like this, as opposed to the brush, which really works on the upper coat, is really good for pulling out the dead undercoat hairs. I've also used one of these tools, and this is also super effective for the outer coat. However, the little prongs aren't quite tight or aren't quite stiff enough to really get into his hair. You don't pull off nearly as much. And I also like to let him lay down when we groom. Some people prefer to leave their dog standing up, and it does make it easier, but he tends to appreciate it more and be more tolerant if I let him lay down. So we've always just kind of done that. And then the last tool that I really like to use is one of these combs. So it's going to be a little hard to see, but here on his ears, he has really long, fine hairs right below his ears, and they tend to get kind of greasy. So this comb's really nice because I can work it through those longer hairs, and it finds, this is an area that's really prone to matting, especially on long-haired dogs. So this coat's really good for finding any small mats that you might not be able to feel because it is hard to feel them until they get pretty big. This is also really great if your dog picks out hitchhikers. So when I say hitchhikers, I mean those little tiny green balls that they'll get all over their fur when they're running through a field. And I can share a picture with that after. This is really great for pulling those out along their legs just because those teeth are so fine. And it'll also work some of that undercoat out as well. I just find the Shed Magic to be a little more useful in that regard. One thing to remember when you are grooming your dog is to not really yank their hairs. So if you are brushing your child's hair, for example, and you start to pull and you're really pulling on a knot, they're going to yell at you. The dog's not going to yell at you so much, but they aren't going to enjoy it. And if you have to do this every week, your dog does need to have some sort of an enjoyment out of it. So just be pretty gentle. You don't want to pull off any of their skin. And then the last thing I do, and every time I groom him, is I finish up with this brush and a coat conditioner. I actually prefer Shoshin, which is an equine product, but there's a lot of good dog-specific products out there. But essentially, it just keeps their coat really shiny and silky. It helps deter some dirt and debris. It helps to add a little bit more waterproofing to it, but it also helps decrease your knots. So overall, just a really good product to use, or any other type of coat conditioner just to improve your dog's coat health. So that's how I groom Marty. If you have a dog that you're interested in kind of trying some different grooming products out and aren't sure where to start, feel free to leave us a comment and I can give you some tips. But thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in 2 weeks where we'll talk about toenails, because that is a hot topic for all of us. Thanks.